Welcome back to Engineers Workshop. Got an opportunity to work on a pretty interesting project, and it's one that I don't think that there's too many videos out on YouTube. Going to be working with a radius dresser on a grinding wheel. And what is this for, you say? Well, my son, always a project for my son, is making a presentation sword for my daughter who is graduating medical school. So apparently for doctors, I guess there's maybe an old tradition that you present them with a sword, and he is making this for her. And there's a feature that he has to dress into this, grinding it, that requires a 1/2-inch radius on a grinding wheel. So that is going to give me an opportunity to use a number of things that I've not used before and that you probably haven't seen. I get to use the tool and cutter grinder to hold the actual workhead, the Toolpost grinder, because that has a 3/8 mandrel for this little grinding wheel. So we're going to use the number 2 tool and cutter grinder, holding the Dumore Toolpost grinder. Going to get to use my Yuasa radius dresser, which I don't think I've shown anybody in the past. First time I've really taken it out of the box. I'm going to get to use my gauge blocks, going to get to use a planer gauge to set up the height of the dressing stone, so all kind of fun stuff. So let's show you what we're going to be doing on this radius. The shape of this sword, after he forged it and heat treated it, has basically a very flattened football shape, like that. And what he wants is, and this is I guess for ease of getting it in and out of the sheath and to reduce the weight, is he wants to have a concave ground into the center. And this is a 1/2-inch radius. So he bought a grinding wheel from McMaster that's basically the same size as the little Toolpost grinding wheels. I think it's a 3-inch diameter, 3/8 wide wheel. And we're going to dress in the edge of that wheel. So we got the 3/8 wide wheel. We're going to dress a 1/2-inch radius across the face of that. And that will be what he draws the sword along to get this concave shape. Leave it set up so that we can redress that a time or two as he needs it. This sword starts out at about, I'd say 7/8 of an inch wide, and is no more than, that's a solid 3/16, maybe approaching 3/4 thick. Then it tapers down gradually over its length, about 24 to 28 inches, to a pretty fine point. It is made of high carbon steel, and believe it or not, started off its life as one of these. This is a spring clip that slides underneath rails. These things are laying all over the tracks, and they take them out. They don't bother replacing them. They just leave them. And he took one of these, heated it up, forged it, drew it out, stretched it, and he ended up with this sword. It's made out of pretty good steel, so probably 0.5, 0.6, maybe even up to 0.8% carbon content. Pretty amazing transformation. Quick update on my 30 horsepower rotary phase converter by Temco. I've had this thing on, have a heat lamp and a heater fan, so 750 watts total for about 2 weeks now, and it's still drawing 175 amps when I spin it up and turn it on. I mean, it's better than it was. It was over 200 amps at first, but I'm just wondering what in the heck is taking so long to get this thing to get the moisture out of it, if that's what the problem is. And just to, clarify, because I had a lot of comments about, oh, the bearings are shot and all this other stuff. This thing was packed full of marble dust and gunk. I completely disassembled it, cleaned it up. I changed out the bearings for brand new sealed bearings, put the thing back together, and started it up. And from what I remember, the thing was only drawing, I don't know, 25 or 30 amps when it was running. And then pretty much shut it down, and
26.
Haven't used it since. It's been a year and a half or two, but the bearings are not going to be bad after just sitting for 2 years. I mean, it's still spinning down, and I don't know. I don't know what's taken so long for the moisture in the windings to dry out and for that current draw to still be so high. But I'm going to continue leaving the heat on it and see if it continues to improve over the next several days or even week or two if necessary. Got a piece of 1/2-inch plate, 8x8 square, that I put a couple holes in to match some existing holes in the head of the tool and cutter grinder. Let's see if I can get this swiveled around here a bit. So there was a ledge here on this side and on the opposite side to mount some auxiliary items. And I'm just going to need to come up with a location that will let me position this spindle basically over the center of the work table. And then this is the 3/8 thick by 3-inch diameter grinding wheel. And this should be a fit for that spindle, yes, thankfully. So this will go on here. We've got room for our belt on the back side. So it looks like basically if I center up the mounting point about 2 inches from the corner on either side, that will position things pretty well for dressing this stone. Let's see if I can get in here and mark the position of this base. That's going to be tough. Basically what I'm going to have to do is measure from the edge of the plate which is also tough. 3/8 of an inch. Three-quarters of an inch. That wheel is very out of balance. Hopefully dressing it will correct that. I think that's pretty good. I'm actually running it at a slower speed than what's recommended. It's supposed to be a number 4 pulley at the top and the number 2 at the bottom. I am running with the number 3 and the number 2. We'll go ahead and get a hole drilled in this plate at this location and mount that more securely. So here's my finished setup with the Toolpost grinder mounted to the 1/2-inch auxiliary plate. There's quite a bit of vibration with this undressed wheel. I'm going to do just a straight dress very lightly to see if I can take, there's possibly a high spot on this. I want it running as smooth as possible for the radius dresser. So let's just do a real quick dressing of it as is. Yeah, you can see how it's not hitting 100% of the wheel, but it's better. And now we'll put the Toolpost grinder on there and see what we can come up with for a 1/2-inch radius. So here's my Yuasa, I think it's a 550 series radius dresser. It's the first time I've ever actually used it. So someone has taken the time to scribe the center height as 3.398. I have no reason to doubt that, so I'm going to assume that's correct. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to try to do this in one setup, is to get the diamond nib centered and then offset for a 1/2 inch radius. So it's going to be a 1/2 inch low from a true center. I'm going to use the planer gauges set up for the this center height minus a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to, actually plus a 1/2 inch, then I'm going to let this nib drop until it touches the planer gauge, and then that should be set up correctly. Then in order to get the center line of the Yuasa on the center line of the wheel, I will need to take the difference between the 1/2 thickness of the wheel, so that would be 3/16 and the 1/2 inch offset, and get a gauge block against the nib and bring the carriage in and out until it touches the side of the wheel. Then I can verify that, spinning it around on the other side, make sure that, you know, the apex of that radius is going to be centered on this wheel. So here's my Lufkin 901 planer gauge. I've got the height set up. I'm about 2 thousandths high. I'm just going to leave it there. So the exact number would be 3.898. I'm at, you know, right at 3.900. And that is the center distance plus the 1/2 inch radius. So I would spin this around until I'm at the 12 o'clock position. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock this. Then I'm going to let the nib, the diamond nib, drop until it touches the planer gauge and snug it back down. And there's my 1/2 inch radius measured from the tip of that point. In order to set up the side-to-side distance and get this centered on the axis of rotation, I need to take my 1/2 inch radius minus 3/16 for the thickness of the wheel. That's 0.3125, and the closest I can come to that is a 200 and a 110. So all I need to do now is move the table in until these just touch. So once again, I'm going to lock my head at 90. And we'll spin this around, check the other side. Just about perfect. I'm within 1 thousandths or so of being centered, which is good enough. And while I'm at it, I'm going to take the time to Sharpie color in the face of the wheel so that I know when I'm fully dressed here. And the last thing you have to be careful of is this is the direction of rotation. And so your dressing stone has to be below center. If it's above center, it can pull the, the forces will tend to pull the point in, and it'll dig into the wheel. And this way, it's always lifting away from the stone or away from the dressing point. So we're slightly behind center in this direction. Unfortunately, that throws all my dust right at my radius dresser, so I am going to cover this with cloth when I turn this on. Okay, I've got my radius set. I'm slightly behind the vertical center of the grinding wheel, and I can basically turn things on and then start creeping up on actually removing some material off of this wheel with this radius dresser. Now, for the sake of protecting all of this, I am going to cover everything with the blanket because all of my grit is going to be thrown in this direction. That's removed all traces of the Sharpie, so I would say that it is dressed to shape. You can definitely see the radius on there. Let's get the radius gauge and just have a look to see if it's at a 1-inch diameter. I thought I had 1/2-inch radius gauge. Closest I've got is a 9/16, which you can kind of tell is a little big, so pretty close though. So we're going to leave this setup in place for a redressing of this as he needs it. I'm going to go ahead and dismount it for now and call it a day. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I know I had fun playing with, learning how to use the radius dresser. Despite my best efforts here, I've got a lot of grinding dust on it, but I'll clean that up before it gets too caked in. And I'm going to leave this set up, as I had mentioned, so that we can put that wheel back on here and redress it a couple of times if necessary. Pretty much centered up on where it needs to be. So I'm gonna leave it alone and move on to a different project. So hope you enjoyed it. Videos probably won't be coming as frequently as I have in the past. I will put some things out when I can, but like I said before, trying to concentrate on projects for the house and getting things like that done. So stay tuned for the occasional post from Engineer's Workshop, and enjoy the spring-like weather that we're experiencing now. And as always, stay safe.